everyone, and welcome back to the third episode of Randomly Leveled. And for the third time in a row, I have with me Big C. Say hello.
What's going on, guys? This is Big C.
And just to point out that it's not been established that Big C is going to be with me here with me every time, but that's just the way that things have been going. And not that you're not welcome, of course, because you are. But just so you know, I may be getting, just so that the audience knows that I may be having episodes with other people at other time. It's basically just whoever I can get and whatever works out at the time. But Big C's been here for me for the third time in a row. So let's get going with it. And the topic of today is the length of games. Now, this is something that I'm not going to spend so much time coming up with a big speech about because I don't think I have too much to say, but I'm going to say this. I think the length of a game depends on how long a game should be, and the question isn't necessarily is a game too long or too short, but rather does this type of game warrant it being long or does it warrant it being short? And what is it that actually makes a game long or short? Because a game can have you complete everything technically in a short amount of time, but it still may be a long game if it takes a long time to practice to get good enough at those things. So I'm just going to get straight into it. Big C, what are your thoughts on the length of games?
Well, that's the thing about length in games. Like, depends. I can understand games being short if it's like a main story of a first-person shooter or platformer action adventure game. That's the thing I can understand, yes. But there's actually a thing called replay value, too, that makes the game reason people keep playing. Or there's actually more stuff you can do, depending what certain games you play.
Well, I think it's quite interesting on the topic of replay value because I think when you're talking about replay value, I have to ask, what is the thing that's making you play it again? And then, depending on what the answer to that question is, it would change whether or not I would really consider it being playing again. Because there are games with New Game Plus mods, so you start again from like the beginning of the story, but you carry stuff over. But then I think I wouldn't really count that as playing the game again. It's just a further continuation of the same playthrough because you are carrying over stuff. It does depend on what you've done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, true.
I didn't mean I didn't mean to sound biased when I'm asking don't you think so rather than what do you think. It's just the way it came out.
But here's the thing, like, you could still have... I'm trying to think here, you could still have, like... yeah, you're just saving your character. That's what New Game Plus is. Save your character. You actually play it again. You got to check the set your old levels from your previous game or bonus items, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's some stuff that gets left out, but it's actually understandable because you don't want to make the game too easy.
I mean, it depends on, like, because if you were to go by the philosophy that a New Game Plus is replay value and starting the game again, then to what extreme could you take this? I mean, could you say that completing a fighting game is the equivalent of having a fight, and then every fight from that point on is just replaying the game with lots of replay value?
Well, here's the thing. There are ways you can actually enjoy replay value of a fighting game. It's two-player. You can play it online. You can still play with your friends or play online. Even though there are mostly a lot of online games, the Kinect network can be obsolete, but you can have the choice to play games two-player with your friends, or probably the other features on there, like arcade mode, story mode, many other things, arena mode, and stuff like that. That's what makes it you want to play more and more. I guess it's kind of like people enjoy those games because it's core gameplay of certain fighting games.
Yeah, I think that when we look at something like the length of a game, we have to ask, what is it, the length of what is it that you're talking about? Because some games you can look at like Elder Scrolls games and people you've got like
Well, yeah,
you've got two different like branches of people. You've got one type of person, which is most people, and these are the people who I think are the most justified in saying it's a big game and it's a really long game because there's loads of different stuff out there, and that makes more sense to me. But there are people who would say the games are really short because you can complete the main quest in 2 hours or whatever.
oh yeah, I remember back in high school, my final years, people would say, "Oh, I beat Fallout 3." Well, did you do the side quest, or you just went through the main story? I get that a lot. That was a very common thing back in the day. I remember someone made a gaming news video about that with Screw talking about that. It was just like, wow, that's a really common thing. I think usually people who play through that kind of way, just through the main story, are mostly casual gamers that don't really have much experience about these titles that much. They just bought the game because it's. I know it's not most. I'm not saying these people are shallow because they bought a game that's popular, but I guess they didn't really know much about the game first time playing through.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. And I think that if you enter a game without being familiar with the territory, you can kind of convince yourself that the goal of the game is to do a particular thing, and because it may traditionally have been the case, you look at that and you see that as completion. Whereas, say, side quests and stuff, people may just say, "Oh, that's optional stuff, so that doesn't count." But at what point does something become optional? Because it's a tricky subject, because if you want to say that something optional is something that you don't have to do in order to complete the game, then we could start calling loads of things optional. Like, if if a game, if there's an RPG whereby it's possible to complete it, beat the final boss and everything, without leveling up once, does that make leveling up optional content? It's not something that I think can be so easily measured. And I also think that when we look at games where the optional content is the bulk of what's there and the bulk of what makes the game enjoyable, then is it really, I don't mean to sound too philosophical here, but is it really optional?
Well, it's actually a choice. Like, if you want to unlock everything, want to beat that game 100%, it's your choice. But there's different types of actual playthroughs. People who rush through the game, beat the main story, and the ones that actually want to play through the game like 100% or play it leisurely and stuff like that. Either way, like it's the way their choices that how they want to play the game.
But what I'm trying to say is that if we look at something like that where there are lots of side quests and people have this idea that to complete the game, I'm using like put that in quotation marks, the word complete is to complete the main story. Have have we or have people been conditioned to believe that that's what completing means? So, like, you could play a game doing loads of things without completing the main story, but still experiencing loads of the content. And so, what is it specifically about defeating the final boss, delivering that final hit to a specific boss, that turns the game from being incomplete to being complete? Whereas we can look at all the other stuff that we call optional, where we don't have this qualifier whereby it is one of those things that changes the game from being incomplete to complete. Really, it's a win state that isn't so. It's rather implicit in that the game implies that that's completed, but there's nothing about certain games that say this game is completed. And you can even take a game without loads of side quests. We generally look at a game, play it, defeat the final boss, and then there's like a big cutscene or whatever, and everyone's happy, and then the credits start rolling and there's music. And a lot of people, I'm not criticizing people for this, But people will look at that and say that means the game has been completed. But there's nothing explicit about the game to say this means the game has been completed. We just see those things and we come to our own conclusion, and that becomes what is believed to be the case, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think there's only one game that will tell you after the ending I could think of that tells you if you beat the game 100% or didn't fully beat it. One game I can think of that did that was Kingdom Hearts 2. Like, oh, you didn't finish all Jiminy's journals, and oh, you didn't do this. Okay, I did not notice that. What did I miss? And there's a and if you beat the game fully, you unlock a secret ending, like which I didn't know much about until I found out about on YouTube. Huh, there is a secret ending to this game? How am
Yeah,
I supposed to know that?
it is. It is really interesting, and I think that when we look at the length of a game, I think that what makes sense to me is not to say how long does it take for someone to complete the game the moment they load it up to get to the end, because there's so many factors involved. I think the length of a game, okay, maybe length isn't the correct word to use, but I think the lifespan of a game is how long we can get people to both how long we can get people to interact with the game, whether that be playing through several times or keep trying and failing over and over again, or whether we can get them to think about the game. So a game that makes you think for a long time, I would say, is a long game, even if technically it's not that long. So you may have puzzle games where you can just sit and look at the screen for ages, not do anything, but you're still playing the game because you're thinking about what to do. But it's still wouldn't be fair to call that a short game, just because technically, if you knew all the answers straight up, you could just click on all the right answers and then win, like instantly. What do you think?
Yeah, it depends if how good are you at the game too. Like, oh, there are people out there that should play it so long and they're not really good at first. It takes them a while to do that. But if they do, if they're really good, well experienced with those type of games, yeah, it'll take less longer for them to finish it.
Yeah,
That's sometimes that works, but yeah,
I do think that there is quite a lot of variance, and it also kind of depends on the style of game as well, because I've often had it where people have told me that a particular game is, and they've described it in this way. They've said the game is short, but it's good, and I'm not entirely sure what they mean by that, because I think in some cases, depending on the style of game, a game can be short and good, but its length contributes to how good it is. And so people have often said to me, for example, with Portal, which personally I think I don't, I think it's okay, but I don't think it's as good as people make it out to be. But people have said that the game is short but good. But I wouldn't say that it would be made better if it was longer. Do you know what I mean?
I know. But there was one game I could think of that it is kind of short, like Spider-Man 2 on the Xbox. If you know that game very well, that game was short. It's the story mode itself. I still had enjoyment between the game itself with the whole playing, fighting the actual villains, like I had some enjoyment with fighting Mysterio and stuff. It was actually a really good experience playing through the story part. There are some side quests you can do in that game, fight all these encounters, doing some art stuff, or you could do the whole collecting hidden tokens, which I haven't done that 100%. But you could still do some art stuff between that,
Yeah,
through the story.
yeah. It's really something that I do think depends on what it is you do and what it is that you're finding out, and the way that they can interact with, like the way that the length complements the style of game, because it does depend on the lasting effect of your actions as well, because if a game is comprised of several self-contained events, those self-contained events usually would have to be quite varied. And so, say like Super Meat Boy, for example, you wouldn't have the same level twice. You wouldn't just have the same levels copied and pasted directly again, because there's not really much value to doing exactly the same thing again. But you can still have games where you repeat certain elements of it, like you may have a game where segments are literally copied and pasted, but because there are variables that change throughout the game, it actually means that things can be different for the second part, the second time you go through it. So it's not exactly the same. And I think the length of the game would kind of have to complement that. What do you think?
But yeah, there's the whole connection between the the segments and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I really do think it does depend, and I would use um I would use a game like Braid, which I really like, as an example of a game that's short and done well because it's short. Because there is a limitation to the amount of puzzles that there can be, and it's because of that that they haven't really dragged it out. But then I look at another series that I really like, Dynasty Warriors, which I know some people really, really hate, and those games last ages. And whilst, yes, you may be continuously doing the same types of combat over and over, the characters level up, you get new equipment, you do all sorts of stuff, and you get all sorts of stuff, that it creates an overall, not necessarily like a story, but it creates a sort of like a narrative arc where you are growing from weak characters to strong characters and everything in between. So would you say that, um, what would you say is a good example of a game that was short and it was good because it was short? That was like that paid, that was, how do I put this? Uh, it wouldn't be have made better if it was longer. And what
Yeah.
do you think would be a long game that would have been made better if it was shorter?
A game that would make it shorter. Oh God, I could pick them all. Like I said, this is my um, previous actual podcast, but Kingdom Hearts 2,
Oh
yes,
yeah,
the game is it is short, 40 hours, but it still felt way too long. They could have just cropped most of the freaking Disney World, which had that made the game way too freaking long. Even the whole introduction with Roxas, that made it too freaking long. That was like I think some over exaggerated saying was that like a 2 hour tutorial. Like, there would have been an option to actually skip that whole part, but no, there is no option to do that.
see, and I would use, I think that's a pretty good example because at least from what I remember of Twilight Town in Kingdom Hearts 2, there really isn't much consistency in like, or no, should I say persistency? Because it's not like parts of it affect other parts of it. It's just a series of events like go to this person, talk, now go to this person, talk, have a fight with someone, go to this person, talk, and there's not really that like connection that keeps it like a flow of a game. It just seems like a series of events that lasts a long time. Would you agree? Would you say that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's a bunch of series of events. It's just like, oh my God, like could they make this game? And I know I complained about the first Kingdom Hearts game being too short. I'd rather play that game because it didn't feel as long compared to the second one.
So would you say that? So actually, no. What would you? I was thinking something there that was just off, so never mind. Um, so what would you say is on the opposite end where something something is long and it shouldn't have been made shorter, and there's actually a quality to it being long.
Should have made longer.
Well, not that they should have
But
made it longer, just that it was long, and the mechanics of the game complemented its length.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of games I could think they're long, but um, I have to say there's a. You mean a good idea for being long, right?
Yeah,
Okay, the good idea for being long. I said this in previous Dragon Quest State, but another example I have to say is Final Fantasy 12. I know I actually that's one of the very only the three Final Fantasy games I actually beat. I actually enjoyed how long that game is, even for 100 hours or so. Even people play over 200 hours that game. I've heard
it's a big game. Like
it's very
even by Final Fantasy standard, it's a big game. Uh, and there's so much content in 12, and what I like about the content in 12 is that it's all integrated. You don't have all these mini games that are like set aside as like something separate, like the all the mini games in 10, and the mini game in 8, the Triple Triad. At least that was integrated into the system of the game, to which I thought made it enjoyable. Which perhaps that's another subject for another time, about how mini games and should mini games be used to lengthen a game and all that. So yeah, that would probably be a good subject. So, is there anything else that you want to say on this topic of the length of games, or are you ready to move on to the questions?
move on to the questions.
Right. Okay. So should I start, or do you want to start?
Okay. Elfer felt rewarded after playing a very difficult game.
After playing a very difficult game, if I succeed, then I always feel rewarded at a very difficult game. Like if the if the success if the reward for success is having done a difficult thing, then I am rewarded by the fact that I have overcome and no longer hindered by a difficult thing being in my way. And I know that sounds like a total cop out and totally generic, but it is absolutely true. And I think any game where there's like a super boss or the stuff that's really hard and I finally managed to do it, and I'm like, oh, finally. And that's not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I always feel rewarded. But do you mean like rewarded, like the game gave me something that was really good?
Giving some, or actually, it's just worth bragging about. You feel proud of you did it, or that kind of deal.
Um, well, one example I can give of one that I feel really proud of is MotorStorm RC, because in that game was really hard, and I it was ridiculous because this is like the Super Meat Boy example to the extreme, because you'd have races like towards the end where it's like you have to complete this race in 4 seconds. Like the race would literally be like 4 to 10 seconds long, but I'd have to restart time and time again because the first tenth of a second was slightly off. So you have to be so precise with it. Especially the later levels where it's the same racetracks, but you just get faster and faster cars. So it's like you're playing as like this like sports car that's like whizzing past on ice. So you have to kind of like brake before you even turn to the corner before the one that you're about to turn round. It's got ridiculous, but I managed to get the platinum on that, and it's probably my proudest platinum that I've got. Even if, would it be the hardest? I don't know, but it's probably my proudest one. Oh, yeah. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I was asking. Yeah,
All right. Okay. My first question to you is, what game, if any, were you really bad at, but really enjoyed.
Really bad at. I recently the game I really was really bad at, I still enjoyed was Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. You know, I suck at 2D fighting games most of the time.
Yeah.
I still had some enjoyment with the soundtrack and the character roster, and it's like, wow, I really love the soundtrack. I really like the battle system. I'm not really good at Street Fighter. I'm not really good at making controlling the Hadouken correctly most of the time.
I'm the same. I can't do like fighting games very well. I just can't do button combos. I do them too fast sometimes.
I could say it's not as bad compared to Mortal Kombat where you had to tap hold down a bunch of buttons and D-pad. That was really I remember I only did one fatality move in the first Mortal Kombat. It was a scorpion just ripping out his face and burned the person to death. And that's all I only did that once. And I didn't know how I did it without if I had to look up a fact website about it, but it's just like, wow, I just suck at Mortal Kombat. It's just like
Yeah. Like,
and
mm,
it's one of those type of games you have to look up some code just to find out how to do the fatality moves. It just really annoyed me.
I know I can't do any of that sort of stuff. It's it's just I mean, I like don't get me wrong, I like games with action and stuff. But when it comes to fighting games, I always have the problem of the fact that it's about button combinations and the problem that I have is that to me at least, when I'm thinking about the buttons that I'm pressing, I mean, you don't think about the buttons that you're pressing obviously when you're playing the game, but usually like a single button is assigned to a single action. So um if you take like a platform game or say have you ever played Guacamelee?
I haven't.
Right, well
But
that does have combos, but each button in each action has its very specific thing. So you press triangle and you'll do a specific attack. You press like up and triangle and you do a very specific attack. And I mean, those they might not be the wrong buttons. I'm just working off a vague memory here. But each part of a combo strings together the actions that you would have done if you did them individually. Like, but with like Street Fighter, where you have to rotate this, like with Zangief, you have to like rotate the stick around twice and then press buttons to grab them and spin around. I I can't relate that into my head because in my head, in order for that to work, it would have to be where like a quarter of a rotation is you grabbing them and rotating a quarter of the way. Do it make sense?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just really just prefer 3D fighting games like Dead or Alive or Soul Calibur. And always this person could play, oh, you like Soul Calibur? Well, that's too easy.
Oh.
Depends on what you mean easy, because there are parts in Soul Calibur series that can be really hard.
Well, I would be perfectly fine with a relatively easy fighting game, and I do really like Soul Calibur 2, and I do really like Soul Blade. But if they were at least relatively easier than normal, that's fine by me because I generally don't consider myself very good at those games. So it would more accurately represent me getting better and all that. If you know what I mean.
Like like one of those old 2D fights, you had to be a very you had to just master the controls really for a while now. And there's a lot of these people who are real well more experienced. Like I just prefer just playing it. Most I playing a game is that a fighting game that's easy to get into for me. I'm not really a fighting game veteran or anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we probably we might have some people like going, "Oh, you two are just noobs, whatever." But it's not that I'm a noob at gaming. It's just that I'm naturally not good at these games. So at least I don't. No, who knows? I may be decent, but I don't feel like I'm good at these games. So an easier fighting game, which may be like, "Oh, this is so casual," that would be fine for me because it would be on my level.
I know it's because I know this. I said this before on Facebook. I really it's this is stupid calling you a noob. It's like calling people a true gamer.
Oh
Okay, that's
yeah,
kind of stupid.
it is.
Like what's worth bragging about being a veteran? Okay, you're better than us, so what? It's like it's not really going to help your success in life or
If you
anything.
really
You
like
brag
something,
about
if
it.
you really like something and you keep playing the game, you will naturally get better at it, regardless.
Yeah,
Unless it's something that's completely random, like heads or tails or roulette, you're going to get better as you play because you learn more and you get more adapted to it.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so your second question is it?
Second question. Let's see here. Where was it? Ever played a game you enjoyed, but when you talk about it, no one in real life ever talks about it?
Azure Dreams, Poi Poi, Poi Poi 2, Soul Nomad and the World Eaters, uh, Digital Devil Saga. There's loads. I can, there's been loads of games where like people just don't know about it or they don't really have much to say. Bloodlines. Now, Bloodlines is a strange one because it was only released in Europe, so I don't blame people for not knowing about Bloodlines. Um, so yeah, there's some games. Did I say Azure Dreams?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
said Azure Dreams,
yeah.
yeah.
So there's some games where people are just like, never heard of it, never heard of it.
Games I know this is a lot of games I play. I used to grew up the PC and Xbox, but there's a lot of games I usually talk about when I know a bunch of my IRL friends this what the hell? What's Sudeki? What's Subterra Core?
Yeah. A very recent example of this is a game on the PlayStation Network called Rainbow Moon, and I really like Rainbow Moon. It's pretty new. I think it was released in 2012, but a lot of people just it's just not really known. And so when I finally saw someone was like, "Yes, I like Rainbow Moon," it was like, "Hold on, I know someone else who knows Rainbow Moon." It's quite a big thing. So yeah, there's quite a lot of those games.
Like it's kind of funny because the Xbox wasn't really big to people who are into a lot of JRPGs because there wasn't a lot of those. It's just like, wow, I play a lot of. Xbox has a lot of hidden gems because most people who played an Xbox either play Fable, Halo, sports games, and something else.
Like
But
Crackdown.
when I talk about, say,
Well, when it was like released, one of the early titles was Crackdown.
Crackdown, yeah, but I'm talking about the original Xbox, like,
Yeah, okay.
but it's just kind of funny because I remember people telling me to buy an Xbox. They always tell me to buy Halo or Fable, and I just didn't really care much for
Yeah.
Halo. But I just really think the Xbox had a lot of hidden gems, and it's kind of funny because most people never played a lot of the other games on the Xbox that I played. It's really
To be
weird.
honest, I don't really know many Xbox games, really, like original Xbox. None. The only ones I can think of besides like Halo are like either like there's that Blinks game, is it called, and some like multi-platform like the Tony Hawk games.
Like around the time, the Xbox wasn't really a console made for me, I guess, but because I was more into a lot of JRPGs and
Yeah.
a lot of Japanese titles. But when I gave it a chance, I tried out these other games. It just wow, it's it. I think the original Xbox can be an underrated console at
And
sometimes.
this leads perfectly on to my next question. Would you prefer the PS3 or the Xbox 360?
I never played the 360, but I played the PS3, enjoyed it. But there are games I wish I had. There's reasons I want to get myself 360. For one, Crackdown, Dead Rising, and Tales of Vesperia. It really sucked. It really sucked that Tales of Vesperia was never released on the PS3 outside Japan. I was really pissed off hearing
Yeah.
that because I don't own a 360. I want to try Tales of Vesperia. People say it's the best Tales game in the series, so even better Tales of Phonia. Like
Well,
I was
here's
really
the
pissed
thing.
off.
I've not played many Tales games, and I played Vesperia. I didn't really get all that into it. I thought it was a lot of, it seemed to be a lot of button mashing, but then there were things that I didn't do that I didn't understand, but at the same time, I was winning all the fights anyway, so it was kind of like I have no motivation to learn things because I'm just going to win anyway. Um,
Like, I know there's people out there that are not really can never get into like real time RPGs. I know there's people out there that people prefer turn-based RPGs with JRPGs. I know you don't like this person as much. Like Spoonie's vlogs, we did the video on Atlas titles, talk about Shin Megami Tensei series. He could never get into the Devil Summoner series, but he loved Digital Devil Saga, Nocturne, Persona 3, and Persona 4. And you're like kind of like one of those people that you could never get into a lot of real-time RPGs.
Well,
Is that true?
uh, no, like, okay, first, just to make it clear, I don't have anything against Spoonie. I think generally he's quite funny. I just think that with his Final Fantasy VIII review, his points were way off mark. I'm
Yeah. He is funny, but there are times his points are a little floozy. Like, he complained about the art style of Final Fantasy IX because it looked like
yeah.
furries, for example. That was kind of stupid because,
Your audio quality is
really, it is weird.
your audio quality seems to have dropped a bit. Can you still hear me all right?
Woo! There we go. I can still hear you.
Okay. So,
Weird. But yeah, but yeah, I know we shouldn't bring up Spoonie constantly, but
you know,
just
if
for
he
prime
likes
example, I guess,
Digital
another person.
Devil Saga, that's a positive in my books because I love Digital Devil Saga.
But I don't know. Have you played Devil
I
Summoner
played a little
before?
bit of Devil Summoner 1, but not enough. The second one never came out here, I don't believe. Uh, well, on this,
Yeah, Atlas is not really good when it comes to releasing games from the
yeah,
UK. It kind of sucks. Wasn't there like there was not really a UK publisher in Atlas
I'm
or
not
something
sure.
like that? I don't know. May I have to look
Well,
this up
between
soon.
the
But
PS3 and the Xbox 360, I'm going to have to say that overall, I prefer the PS3, but I think they're very similar in terms of quality. And I think there's some things that the PS3 has that I like, that I prefer more, and the 360 has some things that I prefer more. But overall, they're both alright. They're both good consoles, so yeah.
I just think I think people pointed this out before. The PS3 has more advantages and disadvantages compared to the 360 with their hardware
Yeah.
and their gaming library. Like PS3 has more exclusives compared to 360 at the end of the life cycle. I've noticed. Well, to be honest, most of the 360 titles ended up on PC.
Yeah. Your audio quality has gone back up to full
Just
again. It's strange.
okay, weird.
Um, so what's your next question? Is it your third question?
Third question. Yeah, let's see here. Oh, it was actually my. Oh yeah, third question. Okay, what are your thoughts about a video game online only for the console?
A game that's online only? Not, you don't mean
Yeah,
the console itself, just a game.
game that's online only.
Um, it can work, but you know, when they sell the game, they're going to have trust in people that the servers are going to be up for at least a decent amount of time, and possibly make it cheaper if that's not the case. But then the thing is, they're going to have to pay for like servers and stuff, so it's a question of like trust. If we're talking about the quality of the game, then I see no issue with it. It's if it is literally just a game that is a multiplayer game and you play online with people, then if they can do it fine, then that's great. But I don't think people have enough trust with the industry for them to be able to do that and for there to not be an uproar. And I probably wouldn't want to play one of those games anyway.
The problem I have with those games, in my opinion, it's good to have it play for a bit, but when the network discontinues, the game is completely
Yeah.
obsolete, and that's one of the biggest gripes I
So
have with
I do
it.
think that it's because of that they would have to sell it cheap to say, because I think in a way, you know, people may still love the game and still really want to play for the time that they can, and so it makes sense to give them the opportunity to do that, but at the same time, as long as we're clear that this is only an online game and not just, close down the servers like really quickly or whatever. As long as the message is clear and people who enjoy it get to enjoy it and feel that they paid a decent price for it, then that's fine. But would that happen if such a game was to be made? I probably don't think it would.
I think the problem, I think usually I prefer online only PC games because usually the online PC games only, usually they don't end up being discontinued. There
Yeah,
are still online network games that are still ongoing, like EverQuest. World of Warcraft's a real good example. I think the online MMO Final Fantasy 11 I think is still around, I
I
think.
believe it is.
Even though there's not much people on the server, you can still
Yeah,
use to connect the MMO still to this day, like even though it has like over 2 million people online, but and you can still play a lot of old like PC games that were released on the Xbox, like for example Halo. You can still play Halo online on
yeah,
the PC, even though it has a single player. Well, the Xbox, the online mode of Halo is obsolete. You only can play single player, and that's the biggest problem. That's why I think there's a lot
yeah,
of
definitely.
disadvantages with consoles compared to PC.
As long if they're upfront about it and people know the terms and conditions and everything, then it's a question of measuring how much you're willing to pay with how long this would be available to you. And if a deal can be made between the customers and the publishers, then it's fine. But beyond that, um, yeah. My third question is, what do you think would be a good way to justify a game series getting yearly releases?
Yearly releases. Here's the thing, I don't problem with the yearly releases, but sooner or later it's going to get really stale. And for me, I don't like playing those type of games. I don't like the whole idea with sports games that do this really same game over. I want people to spend more time in development making the game besides like usually they don't have time to think. It's all about time and money
Yeah.
with games. You know the common knowledge. Like if you can't really think, give it much time to think an idea. It's less time. It's really going to hard for people to come up with great ideas with the game. It's just going to be just mostly be a rehash with adding new components and stuff like that.
Well, I would say that with with yearly releases, a good way to do it would be to make it so. I mean, and I'm not saying this from a business standpoint, because obviously from a business standpoint, people do keep buying Madden and FIFA every single year for the full price. But I think a way to justify it, really outside of the business realms of things, would be if, just accept that the games aren't going to be revolutionary, accept that they're going to be similar, but just make small differences that are cheap enough so that you can release the games cheap enough so that you're on the same level as the customers. Because what I really hate is when you get like E3 and they're like, this brand new FIFA game. Oh, we've spent so much money focusing on the the physics of dribbling the ball and everything, and look at the realistic graphics on this
Or
person's hair. I'm just thinking,
yeah, or yeah,
yeah,
update the character roster, tweak the bit of the
yeah,
graphics a bit, even though it doesn't look much difference
it's
from
just
last
pretending
year.
that every game is revolutionary and it's going to change everything. But we know that that's not the case, because if it was the case, then we wouldn't have this many. Okay, so are you on your fourth question now?
Let's see here. Okay. What game do you okay, what game do you think that's really overhated? You know the term
What,
overhated,
like,
right? The new kind of term on the
I mean,
internet now.
lots of
Overhated.
people hate it.
Hate it so much. So like for example, Final Fantasy VII is example of being overrated. People like to bitch about how it's the most overrated game, but a lot of people like to bitch about how it's about being.
Well,
Another example would be kind of like the Call of Duty games. That gets overhated so much, and people complain about
well,
being
there is a
overrated.
game which I think is extremely overhated, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because I've talked about this with like people loads of times, but I'll just say what it is. It's if you can't guess, it's Final Fantasy 13 because I love that game. I think there's so many amazing things about that game, and yet people hate on it and say things about it which are a lot of the times not true. But I don't want to go off on a big rant about it now because I've done it too often and I'm a bit worn out.
I don't know. I just get tired of people ranting about, oh, like there's still people to this day that rant about Final Fantasy VII being overrated. I remember there's a person that did a rant about in
Yes,
2014. Wow, I can't believe people are still ranting about this in 2014.
yeah.
I I think Mega's X1 said this better. It's not overrated. It's just controversial. If it wasn't for Final Fantasy 7, we wouldn't get all these wonderful games to this day, like
It
Xenogears,
shouldn't
for
be
example.
controversial though. It's just a game that came out and I think it's a great game. I don't know. It's like there shouldn't be so much of a big deal about it. As far as I'm concerned, Final Fantasy VII is a Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy games are great, but that's what it is. It's a Final Fantasy game. It doesn't, and even if it was my favorite, which I don't think it is, even if it was my favorite, I wouldn't want to single it out. It is a Final Fantasy game, and that's just what it is.
It's just
Yeah.
the whole annoyance that people complain about to this day. And I remember seeing like in the comments section videos like one gamer, and all I see is people complain about Final Fantasy 7 being overrated. Like we have heard
Oh
that a
yeah,
million
yeah.
times.
It's 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 a funny thing in that if you go to like these forums, there'll be like a million people saying that Final Fantasy VII is overrated, and another million people saying that 9 is underrated. It kind of goes against your point if there's lots of people agreeing with you. Because like you can't if everyone thinks something's overrated, then it clearly isn't. 'Kay,
Yeah.
yeah, my fourth question is what game were you most surprised that you liked?
Most surprised that I liked. Oh, well, you mean like surprised like I didn't know much about the game at first, but I
Well,
tried it out.
you didn't
Wow, it
expect
was
to
pretty
enjoy it,
good
but
like
then you
that.
did.
Expect. Oh, trying to think here. Like there was a lot of games I'm really excited. Let's see here. Um, let's see here. I have to say again, like one of the other other podcasts that went fucked up is Dragon Quest Five. I was not impressed. I thought it was going to be just like an RPG mixed with Animal Crossing or Harvest Moon. I thought, wow, this concept idea of running a family is kind of
Yeah.
stupid. And I remember actually buying this game at EB Games, and this game was really rare, very rare on Amazon around there because Canada has a really low production value when they don't produce a lot of RPGs in Canada. And I was pretty lucky to find this game in my stores, and it was pretty rare. I got a collector's item. I gave the game a chance, tried it out, and I was really surprised. I was thinking it's one of the first games that actually did the whole
Oh.
marriage system. I know Fantasy Star 3 did this before, but this surprised me. This really surprised me.
There's two games that I would like to say for this game that I was most surprised that I liked. Although it wasn't so much that so surprised that I liked them. One of them isn't. One example is Far Cry 3. I got that on PS Plus thinking I'll see what it's like. It might be alright. I played it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I was surprised that I liked it to the extent that I did, even though I didn't love it. And the other example is Disgaea 2, because I wasn't too keen on the idea when I saw it on GameSpot, but then I was out shopping and I saw it and I thought, I want a new game. Saw it, thought there's nothing else I want. I went around looking for the things, but I eventually came back and bought Disgaea 2. And I played it and did some research on it, and it's what got me into the series. I love the series.
Well, I think really pretty much this guy is one of the very few tactical RPGs that actually made me want to like tactical RPGs more. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance almost killed it for me liking the whole genre. After playing Shining Force 2, I was really disappointed with Final Fantasy Tactics Advance because there's no hub worlds to explore anything. It's just map marker. I hate the loss system. But when I tried games like Jeanne d'Arc, oh, it was all right. I enjoyed it. It wasn't frustrating. But then I tried my friend in high school were talking about, oh, this game is hilarious. What's this game about? Oh, it's just a tactical RPG. I'm not really impressed with this game. I bought it, tried to give it a chance. Wasn't expecting much. I enjoyed it. I really loved the humor again. I loved the creativity with the battle system. You could do so many choices in battle, which gives you so much freedom. Grabbing
Well,
characters and stuff like
what I think
that.
makes Disgaea stand out more than other games of the where you are on a grade is that those games tend to be very strict on what level you can be, and they really phone in on what you have at the situation and how you deal with it. Whereas Disgaea is the exact opposite. You can have your level in the thousands and be up against level 3 enemies, or you can like level up all sorts of other stuff and go crazy with it. Uh,
It's just a JRPG that I really enjoyed. That had so much freedom. I could do so many choices. How I could do it
Absolutely,
right.
yeah.
It's like
Uh, right, okay, so your last question?
last question. Let's see here. Ever felt disappointed that a company or a subdivision of a company was shut down?
Uh, I don't think so. I can't think of any examples. Which I know it's not a very good
Um,
answer, but I can't think of anything. I might think of
I
something in
guess
the
my
future and then like on a later episode go, oh, by the way, that question you asked, yeah, here's an answer. But right now I can't think of anything.
my actual examples. I have to say one company I was really disappointed that I guess it's pretty much I don't know if it's shut down or not, but I'm really disappointed that Interplay went out of business. I guess after hearing the stories that apparently Interplay was a ghoul at first when they sold the rights to Bethesda of their Fallout series. Even though Interplay was kind of a mixed
Oh yeah.
bag, um, I was really disappointed after because really the Interplay was well known for making very good early Fallout games, and yeah, Bethesda made a better improvement with like New Vegas. I think it's better, but I just really have nostalgia for a lot of older games most of the time, even though the games are mostly for a lot of new gamers are not easy to get into for them because it's a little complex. I like playing games that are a little more complex. It makes you think before you do back in the
I would
day.
like to see a new game that uses that same sort of grid-based system as what Fallout did. I don't know how common they are or anything.
I, well, there was Wasteland, but that's not doesn't have the grid
Oh
base
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Fallout was more turn based. You place your character on
Well,
the
it
board,
was a case of
aim.
measure like everything had like a time value to it. So like movement and shooting and stabbing and stuff had their own time like value assigned to it. Okay, my last question before we finish it. Yeah, if I can get my words correct, my final question before we finish this, and I'm actually going to answer this question quickly before I hand it over to you. A game you have had for a long time but not played. Now, I said I came up with this question because I was looking at my shelf and I saw Dark Souls, and I remember getting that in 2011 when it came out. I've not played it. What would you say is that? What would you say is it going for you?
Oh, there are several games like a chunk of Sega Genesis games that don't work. I tried most of them. I guess the Atari 2600 cartridges, like I had it from the Salvation Army. It's like, oh my god, I haven't tried any of these yet. I still haven't played those. Or mostly in television games.
Right?
Oh I have these in my collection. Never actually got. Oh, another game I got for Christmas, which I was kind of really disappointed why they gave it to me. What was it? It was a Guitar Hero game on the DS. I haven't played it. It's never been opened. Why did I
Hmm.
have this?
I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, I must have loads of games that fit into that category, but it was just Dark Souls, the one that caught my attention. Well, probably because I bought the limited edition and I've just not played it. Okay, so that's it for episode 3 of Randomly Leveled. Thank you for being with me here today, Big C. And
See ya.
I'll see everyone else next time. Bye!
Bye.